Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. For those of you that are new here, dropping in for the first time, or you haven't been here for a little while, I'm a men's dating, relationship, and intimacy coach. I guide men to deeper connections with themselves and the people they love. That's pretty synonymous, actually, what I'm doing at the moment. I also work as a couples coach with my partner, Orsa, helping couples connect more deeply, communicate better, and form the sort of fucking amazing relationships they really want. So today is a slightly different episode because normally I'd have a guest, and I don't have a guest today. More because there's a topic that I really wanted to talk about, which is about safety in relationship, safety in intimacy. It's just really kind of screamed out to me over the last kind of month after a couple of retreats. I went on a tantra retreat and went on a retreat with a company called Ista, that, the importance of safety. And I was thinking about this beforehand, but I felt like it's something I definitely want to talk about because, safety is a very important topic, and it's actually a lot wider than we think. But before that, I'm going to tell you some details about some stuff that I've got coming up. So I have got a men's program, an 8-week program running in June and July for men. And that is going to be a fantastic program. It's going to be a really transformative program. It's going to be a very connected program for the men that are on there. We're going to be looking at things like self-awareness. How can we increase the self-awareness? Because however aware you think you are, you're probably a good number of points lower than that. That's everyone thinks they're more self-aware than they really are. So I want to talk a lot about self-awareness and increasing that for self and others, more awareness of other people, emotional intelligence and emotional connection. I'm going to talk about embodiment. There's going to be a lot about embodiment practices in there with breath and movement and sound, around relationship leadership, self-leadership. I'm going to talk about spontaneity, flow, feminine energy, as well as presence being an incredibly important part. So there's going to be a lot in there over the 8 weeks. And if you feel called by these topics, if there's something, if you've been listening to my podcast a while, then these are topics you've heard me speak about numerous times, and sometimes all of them in the same podcast. If you feel a bit nervous at this moment hearing them, or you're thinking, that would be really interesting to be on, then this is your call forward to get in contact. Because there's only a couple of weeks left until registration closes. And I've only got a certain number of spaces as well for men, and they've been filling up over the last couple of weeks. So please get in contact and let me know if it's something you're interested in, because the chances are you'd really get a lot of value from being there. And if you are a woman listening to this and you feel it'd be good for your partner or your friend or your ex-boyfriend, equally, send in my way. I've had quite a few men sign up for coaching and even workshops on the recommendation of their partners or ex-partners or friends. So, it's a very loving gesture you can do for them in that way. And I've also got a relationship workshop, found the foundations of a conscious relationship. I'm running that with Orsa. That's going to be on the 15th of May, which is not far away now for you if you're listening to this. It might have gone already if you're listening to this as well. And that's a free workshop. All the details for both of these, the program and the workshop, are both in the show notes, so you can sign up down there. If you can't make the 15th of May, still sign up, because then you can get the recording will be sent to you afterwards. Something we like to do with all our workshops is send recordings afterwards. So that's enough about that. I don't need to introduce my guest because I am the guest, as I've said. But we're going to talk about safety and intimacy, or, you know, how safety is the most underrated aphrodisiac. And how did I come to start thinking about this? I think I started to see this in my own relationship, you know, and comparing to my past relationships where, you know, maybe I was hiding things sometimes, or not talking about certain things, or not talking about certain emotions and feelings, and how that impacted my ability in intimacy and connection. Because when we're hiding things, we are basically, you know, severing connection. If we're not talking about things, we are cutting connection. So if you're in a relationship and there's no safety to speak about certain things, or express certain things, or request certain things, or say yes and no to certain things, then you are creating a situation where there's no safety. And I know we often think about safety in terms of physical safety, and I'm talking about psychological safety, but I'm also talking about physical safety. You know, there's the safety to say no as well, you know. And it's like, why do we hide things? Why do we hide things? Because we fear we're going to be rejected, we're going to be left, we're not going to be accepted. We fear if we open up about them that any of those things could happen. You know, we fear we're going to be hurt, we're going to experience pain in some way. And that could be physical, emotional, psychological pain. And it isn't necessarily, our fear of it happening isn't necessarily mean it actually has happened, or it may have happened. You know, maybe you have opened up about your sadness about something, and your partner has criticized you, judged you, shouted at you, punished you in some way, you know, or perceived that you received some of that treatment as well. That's also an important thing. And sometimes we just perceive the treatment, and that is enough for us to believe that it happened. And I must also add in here is that when it comes to safety, I feel like as a man, I'm really attuned to this idea of safety, just because of being a man, being a 6-foot black man as well, probably adds to that, you know, I probably grew up, if I'm very honest, feeling that the world didn't feel like it could be safe with me. You know, I grew up in the 90s in the UK, and there was a lot of news around black people committing crimes. So there was a lot of projection, or was projected onto me, of me being unsafe intrinsically. And, you know, I'm sure maybe some of your listeners might not have never had this experience where you're walking down the road and people cross the road as they see you, or, you know, when you're was walking along the street and you're minding your own business, trying to go to a station or back, that people start to look very scared and hurried and jump into shops, watch you go by, and then jump out. And that's definitely something I've had. So I was always really aware of wanting to make people feel safe. You know, I grew up in a house of women, so again, I wanted, you know, safety was something. But it actually goes both ways, this safety I'm talking about. You know, it's also, you know, to the female listeners, is like, you know, are you allowing your partner to be safe? So, you know, one of the areas is like, do we feel safe to have conflict, you know, in our relationship? Do we feel safe to disagree with certain things without being attacked verbally, physically? You know, even emotionally attacked. Like, I feel emotional attack is one of those things that, you know, it can be really overwhelming when you speak and you're met with a flood of emotion from your partner. Or, you know, I often talk about partner, but this could be anybody, a friend, a family member. It really can knock you very severely, I find. You know, if you, I don't know, you say something quite innocuous, like, you know, you don't like a piece of cheese or something like that, and your partner launches into rage and anger and the energy of that leaves their mouth, their being, the way they're acting, it can be really frightening for someone. So it's just to be like, is there safety to do that? Is there safety to not have an answer? This is an interesting one where we're, talking to a partner and they ask us a question, we're like, we don't know. And someone really launches in and is angry. How can you not know? Why are you not giving me an answer? Again, it really lowers that level of psychological safety of like being able to just be like, I'm not sure, and gives them the time to not be sure. Do we feel safe to make a mistake? And this is something I see a lot with the work I do with men, especially men in relationship, is like the safety. They don't feel they have the safety to make a mistake, whether that is intimately making a mistake, maybe could be something as maybe not necessarily trying to advance things too quickly and being met with, again, a lot of emotion, anger, stonewalling, shutting down, punishment, or the ability to make a mistake in, remembering something or doing something around the house, forgetting something even, that is always met with a huge barrage of something. And it doesn't just go from man to woman and woman to man. It goes both directions, right? The safety to make a mistake, the safety to speak about our past even, just to like, oh, I did this thing before, or with an ex-partner I did this, we met with, anger, or why are you talking about that person? We'll talk a little bit about why we react in this way. Are we safe to change our mind and change our mind during sex potentially? Maybe you've started to, get intimate, and then at some point you're like, I don't really feel like actually I want to stop. Do we feel safe to do that? And that isn't always to do with our partners. Some of that lives in us, but we can do our bit as partners to do our half of allowing our partner to feel safe. Do we feel safe to cry? For many years I used to really struggle with my partners crying because I used to take it very personally. I used to think it was about me. If they're crying, then I've done something wrong. And if they're crying, I should stop them from crying because crying is bad. And that created an environment where crying wasn't safe. There were times in my life where I probably got angry at crying, like, why are you crying for? So it's like, really, these are questions, is that safety? And it goes both ways, Again, I know most of my audience is heterosexual. So it's like, do you feel safe as a man to cry in front of your partner? Ladies, do you feel safe to cry in front of your partner? Is there somewhere, you could create that more safety in your relationship to do that? Safety from criticism. This is one we get a lot, you put the glass down in the wrong place. You are instantly criticized for it. It doesn't create an environment of where we feel, again, psychological safety. And do we feel safe from the expectation of doing everything perfectly or everything right? Because again, that's another one that comes up in relationships. It's like we don't want to act or do anything because, oh God, if we do something wrong, we'll be attacked in some way. And have you noticed with a lot of these, it's just safety from a negative reaction. And I mean not necessarily a small negative reaction, but like, a disproportionate negative reaction, in fact, with a lot of these things. And there's one more actually I want to add in. Do we feel safe to love wholeheartedly in our relationships? That's a really important one, isn't it? Do we feel that we'll be met with like, oh, you're too much. Why are you doing that? You should stop. Again, it kind of pushes us back. And all these things here is like, it kind of dampens on our expression, our self-expression when we've experienced these levels of being met with disproportionate reactions. And obviously we have reactions, that's not something we can kind of completely stop, but it's how we express our reactions is something, I'm not believing that people should be robots and they should never react to anything. But I think we could be more aware about our reactions, knowing that are we really reacting to the person or the story about it. And what we really want to do is create an environment of safety whether that's emotional safety, sexual safety, psychological safety, physical safety, where we can feel relaxed and we can feel, our minds and bodies, emotional bodies, feel safe from attack. And obviously, there's many ways that we won't feel safe, and that might have nothing to do with our present relationship and our present partner. It might be due to past experiences, past pain, past hurt, and that's okay, And there are ways to really communicate that, and there's ways to heal that in a relationship. I'm a great believer that a good relationship is a form of healing. We can really heal from past wounds in good relationships. I can definitely say for myself, in my relationship, I've had the safety to express my fear of commitment, my fear of closeness, my fear of having children. I had the safety to do that. And through having the safety to do that, it's been, it's allowed me to communicate more. Just ask yourself, like, in your partnership, in the current one you're in, or maybe one you've been in the past, what wouldn't you allow your partner to express? Was there thoughts or ideas that just weren't welcome from your partner? Maybe that expression could even be attraction for other people. And this one could be really triggering for a lot of us. But actually, I'm a believer that someone having attraction for another person while in a relationship doesn't need to be a problem. I know some people disagree. It doesn't need to be a problem because they're just expressing something. The expression and doing something about it are two very different things. The desire, and the expression of that desire, like moving towards someone, talking to them, sleeping with them, whatever, is very different from just having the expression, being able to say something, or even to be able to appreciate in some way. So, one of the things we really need to do is to learn not to be so reactive to our partners. We are constantly reacting, not to our partners really, but we're reacting to our own emotions about the things that they've been said. So say, for instance, we are with our partners and maybe we have suggested we do a new outing. Maybe, where I'm sitting here, I can see these beautiful hills, and you might say, I want to do a hike. And, sometimes a little spiteful comment can be like, God, you always want to hike. And you might feel like, wow, that's quite a response, to come back with, and a reaction. But actually, you're not really reacting to the person and what they said. You're reacting to this emotion that arose in you when you heard what was being said. So maybe you felt frustration at their comment of wanting to hike. But actually, the frustration is nothing to do with the hike. It's just to do with your story about that person and what hiking means. Maybe you feel like they want to hike all the time and never want to spend time with you. That's the thing you're reacting to, not your partner. That's your story. And it's where we need to start owning our stories and being like, oh yeah, I have this story. Or that story might be based on an experience of our parents. Like maybe your father was always out and not with your mother, and you have this underlying resentment of him from that, and you've transferred that into your relationship. It's starting to uncover the story and narratives that we have that are running in our brains, the kind of emotional body that we have. A lot of us are very filled to the brim with emotions we've been carrying around for much of our life that have never really been expressed. So when we come into contact with people and they cause us to feel an emotion, we don't have much capacity left or space to feel. We just become overloaded and explode in some way. And sometimes that explosion isn't outward in rage or anger, but the explosion is inward, and we just feel frustrated, angry at the smallest of things. Do you find yourself doing that? Your partner does the smallest of things and you get really angry about it. You become very reactive to, maybe they leave a knife, a dirty knife on the side. I love to use these household chore things. I don't know why, but, it's true there. Or your partner, let's use a better one. Your partner, looks at another woman as he walks down the street, and you rage into, that's disrespectful, you shouldn't do that, all these things. And again, maybe this is a controversial idea. It's like, I don't believe that that's so. Your whole reaction is really to do with how you are feeling about the emotion that's arising in you. Maybe there's a feeling of insecurity. Maybe it's a feeling of not being good enough. Maybe a feeling of a repeat of a past experience, maybe with a partner who cheated on you. But in that moment, it's not really about their action. It's about your own feelings. So coming into contact and spending some time with those sorts of reactions is really important. And this is where you just have to start to pay attention to what you're feeling. And this is why I find it's been magical for me to start to learn what I'm feeling, because as I learn more about what I'm feeling, I start to learn more about the story underneath the feeling, like, for instance, for me, it might have been around, I'm in a relationship and I feel like I want freedom, right? And if I ask for that freedom, I go, I'm going to go out for the day. And my partner says, when are you going to be back? I don't really know. Actually, I'm just going to go out. And if I'm met with, you need to tell me when you're going to be back, and all this sort of thing, when are you going to be back? You should tell me, how can you not know when you're going to be back? In me, when I hear those sorts of things, it triggers in me this feeling of like being a school child, being under my mother's rule, right? Now, in those moments there is a beautiful learning moment for me of like feeling the feelings of feeling like told off, not allowed, feeling trapped, feeling like I'm a child, and choosing not to react outwardly in that. I choose to feel it and be like, I feel trapped. I feel like I'm being told what to do. And in that moment, I can really stop with that and go, yeah, that's not what's happening here. I'm not a child. I'm a grown man. And this is my partner. And I could say, hey, yeah, I might be back at 8 or so, instead of exploding and reacting as if this person is my mother. And I know this well because in the past I would have reacted, and probably not reacted in that particularly verbal. I would have just gone, I'm not telling you, and then leaving, It's important that we have, and this might seem contradictory what I said, is like we have an environment where we allow each other to express emotion. I can think of a time recently where I expressed something to my partner, Orsa, which, she found hurtful, or not to start with. But I was allowed to express it. I knew that it would be okay to express it. And once we discussed what it was I expressed, there was a moment of connection because you had a deeper understanding of who I was. And it's just very important for us to be able to express emotion. And I know this probably goes contradictory to what I was saying about reaction, right? But when we express emotion, it doesn't always have to be in reaction to something else. We don't have to, if I'm saying I'm feeling sad, I'm just feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry. But there's a way in which you can express it, even if it's a reaction to something. If she expressed in that moment, she's feeling hurt by what I said, I can be like, okay, cool, yeah, I understand that. I can be with that. If the way she expresses her hurt by it is a disproportionate reaction or a huge burst of anger, that isn't a helpful way to react to something, right? But equally in that moment, I also get to choose how I react to her reaction. I did a workshop recently around relationship leadership, and it was exactly this. We were talking about this, the reacting to the reacting. Because when we react to the reacting from someone, what happens then is we just end up in this cycle of argument, because we've stopped really being present to each other. We've stopped really listening to each other. We've just gone into a reaction. So, being able to share our emotion creates an environment of safety, massive. Of crying. I think crying is a big one. As I mentioned before, it's like, how can we allow our partners to cry and we don't have to stop them? Because it gives them the safety to express who they are. Like in that moment they want to cry, then they can cry. And then that allows people to feel like, I can be me. I can be me. Wow. Imagine if you're in a relationship and you're like, I can fully be me in this relationship. How beautiful would that feel to you? Now, can you give that gift to your partner? Another thing is where we create an environment where our yeses and nos and our consent is actually respected, and adhered to. So if I say no, it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to think what it is. It's like, can I hold your hand? And I say no. It's like, okay, cool. You said no. You have the right. I have the right as a sovereign being to say no to things and to say yes to things. I have a right to say yes to things that are good for me and I want, and I have the right to say no to things that I don't want and are not good for me. You always have that right. As much as sometimes we tell ourselves we don't, and I have to say yes, I have to say no. if we start to become really responsible for ourselves, responsible human beings, it's like, say yes and no. It's also important for us to create an environment where conflict is accepted and we can have conflict. And I know this one well because I didn't like conflict for a long time. I found conflict to be very, very difficult. It's like, oh, there's a conflict. I don't want this. Like, I avoided conflicts. I wouldn't speak. So there was no conflict, and actually it would make things worse. Because actually sometimes and often conflict can be an opportunity for connection when handled properly, when talked about in a way that is respectful of both people, and there's listening so that you can actually understand each other deeper. Maybe that's a fear, maybe that's a worry, maybe it's a concern, maybe it's a need, maybe it's desire, but it allows each other to connect over that. And it's important to create an environment where people's physical space is respected as well. This might sound basic, but, if someone doesn't want you to sit on them, and they say, can you please not sit on me, then you don't sit on them, It sounds really simple, but we do these micro things a lot to each other, all these micro times that we ignore what someone wants because it's not in line with what we want. And we're always going to be doing this as well, right? We can just aim to be better in our relationships. And obviously I talked about, creating an environment where you can make mistakes without being attacked. And I think this is a big one because, as I said, I've worked with a number of men around intimacy, and quite a few of them have got themselves in a situation where they feel quite fearful of their partners. Like, oh my God, if I don't do everything right, if I don't make her orgasm, she's going to be angry and it's going to be a problem. Or maybe if I don't initiate sex in the exact way that she wants, then there's going to be a problem. And what that actually does is stop us from actually involving ourselves in those activities. And it can often come just simply from a reaction of anger, or that can come, or perceived reaction of anger as well. And into this one, like creating an environment for sexual exploration is possible without judgment, where maybe your partner turns to you and says, oh, I'd really love you to spank me. And if your reaction to that is you pull this really judgmental face of like, what the fuck have you just said? That is not necessarily creating an environment for this sort of safety of exploration, of sexual exploration and expression. If you just react by going, okay, I've never heard, it's okay, I could be open to that. In what way? Being really like curious about them. And also, on the sexual side, is being in an environment where you can say no to sex, or not having sex, or not doing certain sexual acts without attack or judgment, where there's compassion and understanding. So the question now lies is how do we create this sort of environment in our relationships of safety? Listening. Actually listening to each other in each other's words and what each other are feeling. And as much as you think you might be listening, the chances are what you do is you listen to your partner and your inner voice is critiquing, judging, modifying what they're saying and imprinting other past experiences into what they're saying. So you're hearing them talk about their day at work, for instance, and you're sitting there thinking in your head, oh yeah, you're always gassing on about your day at work. You're always saying how your boss is an idiot. Yep, you always complain about Brenda. God, Brenda doesn't do anything. You're just so miserable. And you're not actually listening to them, because then what happens then is when you start to talk, and before you even start to talk, your facial expressions sometimes start to tell what you're thinking before it's left your mouth. And you start to, and then you react to that story and that narrative you've been, babbling away with in your mind when you open your mouth. And some of us are so habitually in this that we actually don't really see the difference between listening to just the words and what someone said, the feeling and like the facts of what they've said. And like, okay, so you had a good day at work. Yep, Brenda did this thing. Oh, your boss was really kind to you. Yep. We don't even actually hear that. We just hear our story and we react to our story. And that's not listening. That's not really listening to people. And I, maybe I feel quite lucky as I've trained as a coach. Because of that training, listening is an important part of what I do. Listening quite exactly to people, listening to the feeling of what someone's saying is intrinsic part. A lot of my clients, I'm pretty sure they have the experience of, they've said it to me numerous times, is they've never been listened to as deeply as I have listened to them. Imagine these are men, women, or mainly men, who are in their 30s and 40s, and they've never had anyone just deeply listen to them and what they're saying. I always feel that as quite a beautiful sentiment, but also quite profound, but also quite sad that we just don't listen to each other. We're so busy trying to think about a response or a defense or an attack in some way that we don't really listen to each other. So to create an environment of safety, one of the number one things is to actually listen. And that might be, as the example I talked about, if our partner is like, say for instance, they want to try a new sexual act, like I said, it might be they want to go to a sex party, right? I recently talked to someone about going to a sex party. Our partner might say, I'd really love to go to a sex party. And in your mind, you're like, oh shit, they're not happy with the sex. They want to be with other people. Oh my God, if they want to be with other people, that means that I'm not very good. If I'm not very good, that means they want to leave me. And then you react from that story. And that story would be like, why would you want to go to a sex party? Oh, that's stupid. That's a stupid idea. You don't want to go there. That's reacting to your story. Reacting to what was being said would be, oh, you want to go to a sex party? Oh, why? Why do you want to go? What do you want to get out of it? I'm interested, because they've just voiced something. I want to go to a sex party. Okay. Oh, I wonder why that is. That would be just listening. Or saying, oh, I heard you want to go to a sex party. Why do you want to go to a sex party? That's actual listening. The other side of things, what we are habitually doing, is just reacting to our story. And this is one of the biggest reasons for arguments and disagreements in relationship. It really is. I just see it time and time again in conversations, and I see it and hear it around me. So another way to create this sort of environment is through being present and aware. This is huge, right? And this goes really in line with the listening that I just said, is like being present and aware of the story that your mind starts to generate. Be present and aware to your body and, your nervous system to a certain degree, where you hear something or you see something and you almost lose your mind. Like the term lose your mind, I find quite interesting, because it's like we get flooded and overloaded with emotion and feeling, and we stop thinking really rationally. We stop being present to what's there. And we just, we're lost in our past fears, our worries, concerns. We do, lose our rational mind in those moments. We get completely flooded, and it kind of knocks out the rational part of our mind that can hear and go, okay, that's what I've heard. Let me find out some more information or understanding. And this, when we can start to be more present, aware, and just be with what's happening in our minds and bodies and be like, okay, wow, I'm feeling really angry in this moment. I wonder why that is. Oh, there's this story in my mind. I've made this mean something about me even. And we can just pause for a moment, maybe breathe, maybe even take ourselves away, right? That's not a problem as well. It stops us from reacting out of that feeling, which might be rage, anger, abuse, verbal abuse, like hostile questioning, any of those things. So it's like with presence and awareness, this starts to come, And also I'll add in compassion. And I think I have this somewhere on my list, but it's like having that compassion for someone else and being like, what's it like to be in your shoes in this moment? When we start to think about reacting, it's like having compassion for the other person and trying to understand them, because this creates more connection. We're less likely to react. We're more likely to be with our partners. And this is all a lot, like I said, about working on our reactivity. And like this has been, I think for me in the last few years, it's like really seeing how I react to things before I've even really thought about them. I just react to the emotion instead of really thinking about what I've heard. Like, I give the example of, I was going to give the example of what I gave earlier about freedom. And I think it's still a good one. It's like reacting to my past story and the emotion that it generates instead of reacting to this present moment and what's happening now. It's just a question, right? And maybe sometimes that question has some emotion behind it, but you can just react to the question and be like, yeah, I'm going to go out for a while, instead of the story about it. So working on that reactivity. Also, something we need to be doing is having like really good structures for discussing difficult things and having respect during conflict, where, if there is a disagreement or something that's being discussed with high emotional charge, it's like allowing each partner to speak without being interrupted, or allow a partner to speak without being spoken over. That level of respect for each other goes such a long way in creating safety in the relationship, because it will stop if once you start speaking over each other, it starts to go to shit. We all know this, but we almost don't have the self-discipline and will to not do it. And this is where we learn to be more present and more aware, because like when we have this urge to talk over them, we just stop ourselves and go, nope, I don't need to do that. I can wait until they finish talking and then I can reply. Or, maybe respectfully just ask them to stop speaking so that you can maybe reflect back. If you've been to any of me and Orso's workshops, we talk about a technique for really allowing each other to speak individually and listening and so forth. And it's something that will most likely be in the Foundation of Conscious Relationship workshop that I mentioned earlier as well. One of the things I think really helps create an environment of safety is understanding and learning about fears of each other's fears and any potential trauma that's happened in our lives. Because when we can speak about those fears, we start to get more understanding of our partners. I can tell you, for an example, conversation me and also had a long time ago when I started to tell her, I was like, for me, the fear is like loss of freedom and commitment. That's my fear. Like when I perceive that something's happening that's around me losing freedom, or me like feeling like I'm being kind of closed in and not allowed to do things, I become reactive in those moments. So in explaining that to her, she has an understanding of this. And there's times where we're having discussions and she's said things to me and she's like, and she said it plainly to me. She's like, David, I'm not trying to take your freedom away. Can you hear that? And like, it kind of jolts me out of my reaction. Like in my head, I'm thinking, fuck, she doesn't want me to do anything on my own. Oh man. And then when I hear that, it's like, oh shit. Oh, I'm back in consciousness because I'm hearing those words. And this is where it's really powerful to understand each other's fears and even past trauma, like for me, I'd say in my life, I don't think I have severe trauma, but especially the situation of growing up with my dad and not being there, and stepdad who was pretty horrible person, just neglectful and absent as a human being, that it created an environment for me around, like, even sometimes I can be really silent when there's like older men around or men of authority. Like, so she understands this. It's like when we have this understanding of each other, we can connect better. We can connect more deeply with each other. So it really makes a difference when we can connect in that way. So it's really important, fear, and listening with compassion, because someone's fear is not a judgment about you and what you are going to do and not going to do. It's completely about them and their past experiences, right? So my fear of a loss of freedom is not really about Orsa. So when I'm reacting to that, I'm not actually really reacting to her. As I've said before, I'm reacting to my existing beliefs about freedom. So when we know that, we are equipped to handle our partners with more compassion. It doesn't take away their responsibility to be responsible for their reactions, but it also is a loving gesture of compassion and understanding. And this kind of ties in with, learning about each other's past pain and difficulty, so you can support each other in that as well. Maybe you're with a partner, and I should have a trigger warning here, a partner sexual violence trigger warning. Like maybe you've been with a partner that's suffered sexual violence at some point. It's definitely been an experience that I've had in many of my relationships. But when I've known that and been able to be like, okay, so I'm, deeply sorry to hear there's something you've experienced. Like, is there something that I can do and not do to have you feel safer in these situations? And it could be something as little as like, I really don't want you to pull my hair. I don't want you to put all your weight on me, or push my arms down against the bed where I can't move, because then it reminds me of my experience. You're like, I understand. Cool. You can support each other in that way. And maybe even over some time, when that starts the safety is really there between the two of you, you could even make suggestions of like, how do you feel about that now? And they're like, I feel a lot safer there. And it's like, okay, like, is there anywhere you want to kind of safely push into that area that you feel worried about? Like, do you want to explore something like BDSM maybe, where we can do that safely, and that could help you with how you feel? And you see where there's a compassion there and a love and a care and wanting to help your partner, creating safety. And then you can, when there's safety, you can start to push boundaries because we feel safe and we feel we can trust our partners. They will be completely there for us, listen to us, support us, hear us, feel us in those moments. It's obvious respecting each other's yeses and nos in many areas, but, in subtle ways, we often don't do this. Maybe you ask your partner and you're like, oh, I don't want to talk right now. Oh, I don't really want to talk right now. And then we badger our partner to speak. We force them to talk and express what they don't want to express. Don't do that. Respect someone's yeses and nos, because we'll slowly, when you do that, it means that they'll know if they say no, then you'll leave them alone until they decide they want to speak. It's a level of taking away someone's power when you kind of override their no and try and force them into something they don't want to do, right? So really look at that. You want to create an environment where emotions and feelings are okay. And this, again, might seem like a contradiction to the reactions. It's like you're going to react to stuff. And you also want to be like, okay, sometimes we react. You're still responsible for that. And shitty behavior when you're reacting doesn't need to happen. You don't need to be shitty with your reaction. Your emotions don't have to be expressed in a shitty and hurtful way to people. You can express them in a way that is present and kind and compassionate to what you're feeling and to them receiving. So create an environment where emotions and feelings are okay, even if they don't make sense. Even if the emotions don't make sense. If, wake up in the morning and someone's like, how are you feeling? We got a really big day. And I'm like, I feel sad. It's like, okay, cool. You feel sad. Oh, why do you feel sad? Not, you shouldn't be feeling sad. Like whenever you're telling a partner they shouldn't be feeling something, your relationship is really not in a potentially, well, it's not in a bad place, but I don't think it's a particularly healthy thing to be telling someone they shouldn't be feeling something, because feelings are unpredictable and based on, as I said, much of our past experiences. The last point in here about creating an environment for safety, create an environment where vulnerability is celebrated, being vulnerable with emotions and feelings, information, past, whatever it may be, expressing pain and sadness, but create an environment where it's celebrated, where it's like, thank you for sharing. Thank you for opening up to me. I know that might have been difficult. Thank you for sharing that thing that you thought that I might attack you about, or that, could be difficult for you. When we start to do that, we create this safety. And it might seem odd that I've, mentioned all this type of safety. And I think this is an aphrodisiac because it creates openness. When we feel this safe in our relationship, and this can be a long-term relationship, this could be a short one, this could be someone you just sleep with sometimes, but when there's that safety, we feel we can be more open, we feel we can be more relaxed, right? When we can be more relaxed, we can feel turned on, we can be excited. It's really a beautiful thing. So it's like if you can create this sort of safety in your relationship between the two of you, because I said it's a two-way street, it doesn't just go one way, your partner will feel a lot more open, a lot more relaxed to you and to your way of being and to communicate with you. And this will only add to, the aphrodisiac nature of the safety I'm talking about. And yeah, there might be some other parts that need to be added in to really relight that, have a very burning spark and fire sexually. There might be some parts about leadership and, healthy domination or surrender, but a lot of what I've said today will really, really help with any sort of safety issues and creating more safety in your relationship. And I'm very surprised I've been able to talk for 40 minutes, to be honest, but it's something that I've just seen as so important. I had a lot of people come to me saying to me they feel really safe and grounded with my being. And I had to really look and be like, why? And a lot of it sometimes was like, I don't want anything from anybody. I just want to experience their expression. I don't need anything. I'm not trying to push an agenda and all these things, which we so experience a lot. And we feel sometimes with people like, they want something else other than they want. Or, there's something they're hiding, they don't want to express. So it's really important for us to create this safety in our lives with ourselves. Even there's an element in what I was saying is creating the safety in yourself, you to express to yourself. If you want to, one of my things I'm getting a lot of my clients to do at the moment is dance. And this is men, I'm getting to dance more, spend some time dancing. Learning just to express your body with yourself, on your own, dancing. No sort of particular type of dancing, no two-step, whatever. Just really just letting your body move how it wants to. Teaching your body to express itself, making sound with movement. It's really powerful. I found it to be really beautiful in just speaking my truth and saying what I want to say. because I'm used to using my body in different ways to express. That'll be enough for me today. I'm going to stop talking about safety. I'm sure you've got the idea. I'd love to hear from you about your experiences, your thoughts and feelings, what you've learned from this episode. I'm always excited to hear people, what they've got out of listening to me and the episodes I produce. But there's more than anything just to know that it's made a difference and, there's something you've been able to change in a relationship. So you can get me on Instagram at @theauthenticman_, or you can get me at hello@theauthenticman. If you're interested in any of the programs, the program that I mentioned, the men's program, or you're interested in the workshop, the couples one, also, again, they're in the show notes, but you also contact me if you have any more questions. And actually, a little request, if you're listening to this on Spotify or you're listening to this on Apple, if you could go and give me a 5-star review, click the star at 5 and then maybe even write a review, that would be amazing. I always forget to ask for that, but it does make a difference. It allows, those ranking systems, show them to more people, which means that more people get heard, more people get to hear my podcast, more people get the help that you're, currently digesting. And it really takes a really small effort, and it just allows it to be shared with more people. And that's enough for me today. I wish you good day, good evening, depending where you are and what time you're listening to this. And until next time, ciao, ciao.